I know what happened.
Well, I
You
gotta be
came.
in here by 5,
Yeah.
so
All right.
I hope we're out
That's
here.
good to know. Tom. All righty, I'll go ahead and call to order today's Board of Supervisors meeting. The time now is 3 p.m. and today is August 6, 2024. With that, I'll request a motion to approve the agenda with one minor amendment. We're going to remove the special presentation from the school board regarding the construction grant. So that'll be item number 7C. So with that, I'll actually go ahead and make that motion to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. I vote aye as well. Next, we have the invocation and pledge. I'll lead the invocation and followed by Ms. Tucker, who will give the pledge. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, we come to you today to first and foremost give you thanks for the day, the beautiful weather we have, regardless of the upcoming rain we might be facing, and we give you thanks for that as well. We ask for your guidance today, Lord, as we take on the matters of the county, and we ask for your protection here and with our law enforcement and emergency service personnel. And Lord, just let everything we do bring honor to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Next item we have is citizen comment. Any citizens wishing to address the board at this time, feel free to come up and state your name and district. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to ordinances. We've got first reads. We've got ordinance 2024-4, procurement. Mr. Bryant.
Yeah, this generally is about as simple as they come. This is an update for the title. We had it in the purchasing manual. Procurement was for the purchasing director. We changed that title quite a while back. And so the new title is the Procurement and Contracts Division Manager. So all we're doing is changing title to be in sync with what we've done.
All right, thank you, sir. Board, any questions? All right, hear none. I'll go ahead and make a motion here that the board directs staff to advertise ordinance 2024-4 for a public hearing on August 20th, 2024. Any further discussion, board? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Any opposed? None? All right. Motion passes. Next item we have is ordinance 2024-5, confined livestock facilities. Mr. Creasy.
Chairman, Board, good to see you all. As you indicated, the Board is conducting a first read regarding Ordinance 2024-5. The purpose of this ordinance is to update the setback requirements and other regulations relating to the confined livestock facilities. The ordinance before you is brought forth by Planning Commission's recommendation 6-0. Before we get into the changes to the ordinance, I would first like to go over what a confined livestock facility is, and then before you, there's a chart of surrounding localities and how they view certain setbacks for these types of facilities. Our definition of a CLF, or confined livestock facility, is a feedlot in which more than 100 animal livestock units are confined and fed. A CLF includes the waste storage facility. A feedlot is an enclosure used for concentrated confinement and housing of animals and poultry, a place for feeding and fattening animals, a coop or fenced area where the surface of the ground has become generally denuded of grass or other ground cover due to animal activity. Pasture lands consisting of densely vegetated fields or hillsides are not incorporated into that definition of a feedlot. In addition, our definition of an animal livestock unit is one animal livestock unit equals 1,000 pounds of live weight for any animal or group of animals. On the chart before you, you can see a few things. Right now, these are our existing setbacks from property lines to right-of-way setback and for existing dwellings. Currently in the county, we have a setback of 1,000 feet from property lines. Right-of-way line setback, our ordinance actually indicates it cannot be seen from a state-maintained road, and from existing dwellings, it's 1,500 feet. Rockbridge County, right across the mountain path, it's 300 feet from property lines, 150 from right-of-way, and 600 from existing dwellings. Nelson County, Augusta County, and Appomattox, they do not address confined livestock facilities. They would just view these facilities as an ag building, and you would just have to meet the setbacks. I would assume they only allow them in the A1 district. Staff did not look into that, but meet the setbacks for that zoning district. Bedford County has setbacks of 250 from property lines, 150 from right-of-ways, and then 300 or 500 feet from existing dwellings, depending on if it's dairy or if it's swine. They differentiate between the two different livestocks. And then Campbell County, they have a little more inclusive ordinance where they separate dairy, livestock, and swine, and you can see those setbacks before you for those types of uses. Regarding the proposed change the Planning Commission has provided you today, this is under the A1 Agricultural Residential District 702.02.13 or .13 for confined livestock facilities. As indicated, our current ordinance indicates that a setback of 1,500 feet is needed from any house not on the property owned by the applicant. The Commission's recommendation is to change that to 600 feet. Currently, moving on, the next setback existing is 2,500 feet from public places such as schools or churches. The proposed recommendation is 600 feet setback. The next setback is in regards to CLFs to perennial streams indicated on the 7.5-minute USGS topographic survey maps. It used to be 1,000 feet. It is now proposed to be 600 feet if the facility is not enclosed, and if it is enclosed and under roof, the setback would be 100 feet. Regarding the state-maintained road, currently it cannot be seen. The proposed change would change that setback to 125 feet. Our current setback in the A1 district, 75 feet from center line. Staff used that math and they added 50 feet onto it, so if it was fee simple, it would be 50 feet. And so that's how staff came up with 125 feet from the right-of-way. Item E, this is a brand-new section for confined livestock, and it's to be located more than 600 feet from residentially zoned districts and boundaries of an incorporated town. Items F and G are not changing, however, so that y'all are aware, it's a maximum of 250 animal units or 250,000 pounds of that type of animal can be combined per 50 acres. So if you were to have 100 acres, staff's determination is that you could have 500,000 pounds of that type of animal, depending on its species. Item H, it's straightforward, we're keeping this the same. The applicant for these types of permits must be a county resident and the property owner. Item I is completely new, in which confined livestock facilities shall prepare and follow a nutrient management plan for responsible and environmentally safe management of all animal waste. Such plan shall be approved by Virginia Department of Environmental Quality and any other required agencies. And the last addition to this ordinance is the disposal of dead animals shall be handled in an approved manner as specified by the Division of Animal Health and the state veterinarian. Those are the proposed changes brought to you by the Planning Commission. There is a recommended motion found within your item summary. And at this time, are there any questions for staff?
Board, any questions? Yes, Mr. Martin.
So, items B and C, that appears to me to be the most drastic change from 2,500 feet from a school or a church down to 600. So that's one question. And then C, 600 feet from 1,000 if it's not enclosed from a perennial stream, and only 100 feet if it's enclosed from a perennial stream. So talk a little bit about the why there's a setback from a perennial stream and
Well, if it's enclosed, it only needs to be 100 feet. I mean, there's still going to be waste and probably lagoons and all that. I would think that the setback from the stream is to keep it out of the stream, right? So are you
Right.
telling me that 100 feet is adequate?
Right, and so this is through our research with looking through DEQ and what other localities have looked into. This exact 600 feet and then 100 feet comes from Rockbridge County. And the difference between our ordinance when it was first created and now is the creation of nutrient management plans and their requirement through DEQ. They must be properly permitted through DEQ for all these types of facilities and must undergo more stringent requirements than the county would enforce on them. And through these nutrient management plans, the enclosed structure, so if you were to keep all of your manure enclosed, in theory, that is when it's reduced to 100. Now, if you have it open, we want to make sure you're set back a little further from a stream. However, staff believes that by requiring them to produce this nutrient management plan from DEQ, which is more stringent than county regulations, the intent and nature of that setback is still being met to its fullest nature by protecting these streams from these uses.
So DEQ is going to be in,
DEQ will be involved. They will have to submit an approved nutrient management plan to the county before a zoning permit can be issued.
okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a few comments because I watched this process very closely. The Agriculture Committee made a field trip to several counties, and they looked at a number of confined livestock of different species. And I will tell you that what you see today is not your grandfather's farm. It's much, much different. As Mr. Creasy said, DEQ, everything has to be run through them first. They are much more stringent than what we have been. Also would like to tell the board and other folks listening that Amherst County is going to be home to the largest organic layers, which is a chicken house organic. They're selling organic, and it will be on Naked Creek Road, which is your district, Mr. Martin. And it's the largest of its kind in the state. So I was very comfortable and I was very enthusiastic with the work that I saw from not only the Planning Commission, but the Agriculture Committee as well. Thank you.
Board, any further questions?
I have a couple, Mr. Chairman. I guess I feel somewhat more comfortable that the Agricultural Committee was involved with this. Obviously, I think you and I will probably be honest, I am very cautious about restricting our farmers any further than we already do. And that's one thing Amherst County has built its foundation off of, is agriculture. I do have some concerns about some of these setbacks, and I understand what you're saying, Ms. Tucker, that this is not your typical, what you think of. But still, a 50-acre lot and 250 head of cattle in that 50-acre lot, that's pretty densely populated. But I also am concerned about the 125, because you think about 125 foot, that's a pretty good setback from a highway. And I'm thinking about some large populated farms that in my district that obviously they were grandfathered in, but if they were starting from scratch could apply to, that's also a fair amount of pasture that they would lose with that setback.
I don't think they're losing the pasture. They couldn't have the building there, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Or if they denuded the area to where they maybe use that area as a feedlot area.
So this has nothing to do with fence lines or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay, so just fixed structures.
Just the structure, or as indicated, I'll scroll down for you. Our definition of feedlot, which is right here, this would, they would have to meet a setback for that considered feedlot area. But not, pastures are excluded from that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just think of feedlots as an open air versus a fixed structure.
Right.
There's two different definitions in my mind from what I know about farming. Correct?
Yes, I know exactly what you're
know what I'm
thinking
saying?
about, and I agree with you.
Yeah. So that's, I want to make sure that we're not placing additional restrictions on our farmers that are unreasonable.
Staff's view is that we are actually loosening those restrictions a good amount with this ordinance change.
So, all right, with that being said, based on what Rockbridge County is doing, where was the decision made between Rockbridge County's guidelines and what we're requesting?
So it's kind of a mix between, I would say what staff has put before you is a mix between about 4 or 5 different localities. The setback to the streams and the 600 feet did come from Rockbridge and through Planning Commission's recommendation. Staff had a few different numbers when presenting to the commission that the commission directed staff to change to bring before you. But the numbers here are the 600 feet and the setback to the streams are consistent with Rockbridge County.
So, Mr. Creasy, during your presentation, you made mention, I think you mentioned some acreage, and then you made mention to weight of the livestock. Can you repeat what you said on that?
Yes, sir. So an animal unit is considered, one unit is considered 1,000 pounds. You hit the threshold of a confined livestock facility as soon as you have 100 units or 100,000 pounds of that type of livestock. And then we have an either further section found within the A1 permitted uses in which a maximum of 250 animal units or 250,000 pounds may be confined per 50 acres of contiguous property. So you've got 2 different numbers there, the threshold to meet the confined livestock and then the maximum you can have per 50 acres.
How much does a chicken weigh?
So that's a great question. That is a great question. So the USDA and DEQ both have average amounts in which staff can go by. Staff's initial thought if we were to be presented with this is to indicate in the zoning permit the maximum amount of weight that they could have for that animal within their zoning permit, based on their acreages and whatever else they have going
If
for
you have
them.
50 acres, you could have over 100,000 chickens? Is that what you're telling me?
Pounds of chickens, yes, you could, in theory, as long as you meet your required setbacks for your facility and get a nutrient management plan, if approved.
Mr. Creasy, the definition for an animal livestock unit is a term of art. It's also found in the code, state code, correct?
I would assume so. I don't want to tell you wrong, but this is our definitions from our zoning code.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I would be cautious with us putting weight parameters in there, because goes back to something that we have all referred to when it comes to zoning changes and things of that nature. Who is going to police the amount of weight that's, because I would challenge just about anybody that can go out and tell any of us how much a feeder calf is in a feedlot and be able to average that out for the farmer. I think we're getting a little too deep.
That's already in the code, right?
That's already in the code.
Well,
And the nutrient management plan submitted to DEQ will have to indicate those numbers based on the manure that they've got to do and things of that nature too.
okay,
But we can definitely remove those numbers.
that's just my opinion, for what it's worth.
Any further questions, board? Thank you, sir. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we move this forward to the second reading.
All right, motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I will just say that I don't think it's ready to move forward. I'm not anti-agricultural, I am anti-pollution, and I'm not certain that this is doing enough to protect the environment. So I don't think it's ready to move forward, and I'll be voting against it. It's not that I'm against doing some changes to make it easier on the farmers, but I'm not sure it's necessarily been thought well out yet, so that's my thought.
All right, motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. Any further discussion? All right, hear none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Any opposed?
Nay.
One opposed. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Creasy. Next item we have is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Any opposed? Hearing none, consent agenda passes. Next, we have special presentation, the fiscal year 23 audit. Ms. Fox.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello. Oh, yes, it's on. So good afternoon. My name's Haley Fox, and I'm a manager at Brown Edwards. I am a manager over the county's audit, and I know my face might be a little new to you all. You're probably used to seeing Susan Chapman come up here and present every year. But I did want to reassure you guys, I have been working on the audit since 2017, so I'm pretty familiar with the number and with the staff and policies as well. As I'm going through this at any time, feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. Sometimes I can kind of be steamrolling through it, so just feel free to interrupt me. First, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak at the board meeting this afternoon. I would also like to give kudos to Stacy and her staff. The audit is a very long process. There's numerous requests and questions we have, so we appreciate their time and effort with getting this audit completed. So you have these audits every year, and I think it's important to kind of go over what exactly does your audit entail. I could just get up here and tell you the opinion, but I like to break down how we got to that opinion as well, and what we do to complete your audit every year. So in my opinion, there are 4 main parts of your audit that we do. The first is the financial statement audit, and this is the biggest portion of your audit. This is where we are giving an independent opinion on your financial statements as a whole. So this includes your statement of net position or your balance sheet items, as well as your statement of activities and the income statement items, and this is across the governmental funds, your business type funds, and the school board as well, and the EDA. Just to give you a quick example of what exactly this looks like that we test, I'm going to use cash for an example. Normally, we would reach out to the bank and confirm with them at year end what the balances is, what they say the balance is on their records, and make sure it agrees to what the county records as well. So that's just one example of kind of what the procedures we do. We also look into testing of management's estimates, such as capital assets, useful life. We want to make sure that these estimates appear reasonable and are consistent with prior year methods that the county has used. And I am happy to report that the county did receive a clean audit opinion for fiscal year 23, and this is the highest level of assurance that we can issue from our end. So kudos to y'all for having clean financials for 23. Your second major part of the audit includes testing of internal controls, and these are the policies and procedures that are in place that the county has to protect the county's assets, such as catching errors or preventing fraud from occurring. So what we do is not only do we understand these processes and procedures, but we also walk through some of these with staff, making sure that the effectiveness of these procedures are in place. And you can have these procedures written all day and night, but we also test them to make sure that staff are following through with them. Going forward, I am happy to say that there were no new internal control related comments for fiscal year 23, so that's very impressive. Nothing new came to our attention as far as internal control processes. There were some continuations from prior year comments. So these were comments that we've made in past audits, and a few of them have carried forward through fiscal year 23. I won't touch on all of them. They are in our audit report, but I will bring up a few of the key ones that I think is most important to bring to your attention. The first is related to segregations of duties, specifically with administration rights to the accounting software, as well as posting journal entries. I do want to note that this is a pretty common deficiency among localities with limited staff. So this is not something unique to Amherst. We do see this across many localities we audit, just depending on the staff size and management and the board deciding what's that cost-benefit analysis of hiring a few more employees versus having a few issues, a few segregation of duties issues. But I will say that the issues we have noted, there are, we call them mitigating controls in place. So these are, while yes, such staff can do X, Y, Z, and really these should be segregated between 2 or 3 individuals, there are some mitigating controls in place to prevent this one employee from going from A to B all the way with no other person seeing the transaction. The second continuing prior year comment is related to a no centralized purchase order system. With talking with Stacy, we believe this will be resolved in fiscal year 2025 with the new software. So you'll notice with a lot of these comments, there is a resolution at the end of this. So I don't want you to think, here's this and they're all bad. There is a resolution at the end that Stacy and her staff have worked out as well. The third comment I would like to bring to your attention is a no completed accounting procedures manual. There are some processes documented, but not a full overall accounting manual is in place. And it will be completed in fiscal year 2026 to 2027 after the software implementation. Stacy and her team are going to work on documenting all of their steps, so if someone had to leave unexpectedly, someone can immediately pick up behind them and know exactly what to do. And the last internal control related comment I would like to bring to your attention is related to the dual accounting systems between the county and the schools. So right now, the county and the schools do operate on 2 separate financial softwares. We encourage, if possible, the schools to switch over to the new accounting software, RDA. We believe that this would be beneficial for both sides because as of right now, there is additional workload reconciling between the 2 financial softwares, making sure that they both agree to each other, and if there is any issues that come up, it's just an extra workload to try to reconcile that. So having both the county and the schools on both the software would solve a bunch of this workload. The third major part of your audit is related to compliance testing. So the Auditor of Public Accounts of Virginia, they put out a compliance supplement every year. It's about 200 pages, and it is a guideline for us to test mainly non-financial tests among localities. So to give you an example of what exactly some of these tests would be, these include conflict of interest statements, unclaimed property reporting, making sure it's filed timely, and various social services testings as well. We did have 2 findings for the fiscal year with the compliance. So one was related to budget appropriations. There were some expenditure line items for the county and schools that were over budget. I will note that the county expenditures and the school expenditures as a whole were not over budget. There were just a few individual line items that were over budget. And we have those listed on page 154 of our audit report, and we can discuss that later, or if you have any questions now about those as well. It is my understanding that going forward, reviews will be completed on all line items to make sure that if there's an issue like this, that it's brought forth and corrected. So hopefully this should be a one-time issue and should be corrected going forward. The second compliance finding we had was related to 2 late filings of the conflict of interest statements. We noted that 2 of the forms were filed after the February 1st, 2023 deadline. I will note that the staff that handle these conflict of interest statements, they did everything on their end. So they did their due diligence as far as giving the board members the forms to fill out, following up with board members if they haven't received the forms, and that ultimately the responsibility of getting these forms filed on time is the board members' responsibility. So the staff is doing their part as much as they can. I do like to bring some good light into this. So in our report, we report current year compliance findings as well as updates on prior year compliance findings. And in the prior year, there was a finding related to the unclaimed property report not being filed on time. I'm happy to report that for fiscal year 23, it was filed on time, so that is no longer a finding for the county. And your last major component of what the audit exists of is testing of federal expenditures. So for fiscal year '23, the county expended almost $13 million in federal funds. Because of this significant amount expended, we had to perform a federal single audit. So what this means is we will test a few major grants that the county received and spent in the year and make sure that the funds were spent in accordance with the grant agreements, as well as if there was any reporting that needed to be done for the grant, that was done as well, reported on time. And other specifications noted in the grant agreements, we make sure that those were followed. So that we tested 3 grants. It was the Coronavirus State and Local Relief Recovery Funds, Title I grant to local education agencies, and the Education Stabilization Fund, which is the GEAR and ESSER funds. So we tested with those 3 grants, it was approximately 41% of your total grant spent for fiscal year 2023. I am happy to report that there were no grant-specific findings. So of the grants we tested, there were no specific findings for that grant. We did have one finding related to a late data collection form filing. So to give you a bit of background, these data collection forms must be filed with the federal government annually, but 9 months after year end. So this would be March 31st after the fiscal year that we're auditing. For fiscal year 2022, because that audit was a little bit delayed, the form for 2022 was also delayed as well. And that is what this finding is related to, is the FY22 form. I will throw in a little caveat that next year you're also going to see this finding as well, because the FY23 form should have been filed March 31st of 2024. But going forward, hopefully with 25, we have all intentions to have it completed on time. So hopefully after 2024, you won't see the finding anymore. So just to kind of wrap up everything that I said, the county did have a clean audit opinion. As far as the FY24 audit, we have already started that. We did our preliminary work in June, where we tested a bunch of internal controls. We've tested some of the compliance requirements we have to do for the state, as well as for the Virginia retirement system testing. So I believe we're on a good track this year. We will be back out in October to complete the county and the schools audit, as well as the service authorities audit. And it is with my intention, it's Stacy and her staff's intention, we are going to have this thing completed by the December 15th deadline. And as of right now, I don't have any worries that we won't be able to make that deadline at all. That is all that I have to present. Do you have any questions for me?
First off, I'll say thank you to you and your team and staff, everybody supporting this. So general consensus for everybody listening, county's doing well.
Correct,
So,
yes.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to the board for questions. Board, questions?
Go ahead.
So I just need some clarification and understanding to help me. So I've spent hours reviewing this thing.
Yeah.
Some of it I didn't know what the heck I was looking at.
Yes.
A lot of it I did. Let me start at the back first, and then I'll work myself in reverse. So these reports that you're speaking of, and I'm assuming, Haley, we're talking about page 152 that I'm looking at, correct?
Yes, yes.
So, do you guys file these reports? Is that under Brown Edwards' responsibility, or is that our responsibility as a county?
For the data collection form?
The data collection form for these?
So it is management's responsibility, but we help assist with that as well. So we
Okay.
still have to sign off on our end that we audited these numbers. Either management can go in, it's called the Federal Audit Clearinghouse website. Management can go in and put the information in. Sometimes they ask us to do it, but in the end, we both sign off on it. We sign off as the auditor, they sign off as responsibility of the numbers.
Okay. Are we penalized for late filings associated with these?
Not a monetary penalization. It mainly kicks back on us. It puts you in a high-risk auditee, which means that going forward to the next year, we just have to test more grants.
So that plays into item number 9, which I was going to ask you about.
Which one was that?
That the county was
Yes,
not determined to be a
correct.
low-risk auditee?
Yes, yes. That is how that plays into, because the data collection form was not filed on time, that bumped you up into the high-risk auditee. So you'll see that again for fiscal year 2024 and 2025 being a high-risk auditee, because they normally do a 2-year period. But going forward, if 25 is filed on time, then your 26, you're going to go right back down to a low risk. And all that means is we're just going to be testing less grants.
Okay. 'Cause I wanted to make sure I was reading that correctly, because that was a really nice way of saying we are at high risk.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
So the segregation of duties, I hear you're saying that this is obviously this is the first time back for me hearing this information. So, and I guess this may be directed at you as well. If this is a repetitive recognition or observation with our audit, what is our plans internally to correct this?
I think generally what I understand, and Stacy jump in if I'm saying this wrong, but it's the number of staff. We're a small staff, we're a small department, and so segregation of duties has to do with how many people are touching and connecting these points. And so because we're a small staff, Ms. Fox, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a common audit issue amongst small localities like ourselves.
Yes, yes.
Yes, which would potentially mean asking for more staff.
Yes, so it's just a cost-benefit analysis.
But it could
of-
also mean having redundancy of coverage within the staff that you have,
Yes, yes.
right? Just to where we have a duplication of coverage.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's correct. That's
Yes, and I think going forward with the
Fair enough,
software
yeah.
implementation, this should help
With that, yeah,
alleviate some of these
okay.
segregation of duties. But before, with Bright, there were certain things that, between Bright and the school software being a dual accounting system as well, it created these segregation of duties issues. With RDA, we believe a lot of these issues will be resolved as well.
Okay.
So you mentioned the different software systems, but the schools has no intent to go into the RDA, right?
It's our recommendation that these schools look into that. I think in the end, it will help with the workload, and ultimately, it is a little bit more riskier having amounts on 2 separate softwares, just because maybe it's recorded in one but not the other. There's miscommunication, any number of issues can come up. So just having one centralized accounting software for the county and schools would alleviate some of that risk.
Mr. Martin, if I can, Dr. Wells and I can't speak for him, but we've addressed having that conversation to start at least discussing that process.
Well, if you remember, when I first came on the board and we started talking about buying the new financial software, schools bought a new financial software and we bought one, and I asked, why are we not using the same one? So now we're right back to, why are we not using the same one? So, I'm sorry, Mr.
No, go ahead.
So, basically, we're looking at fiscal year '23, which was, this ended fiscal year '24.
Correct.
So we're looking at the previous fiscal year.
Yes.
Is because there were late filings the reason why we're getting this so late? Or is this normal that we get it a year later?
Normally, it does happen earlier. The audit does have to be, the state of Virginia wants it done by December 15th.
So basically about 6 months after the fiscal year.
Correct, yes. It's my understanding with the staff turnover as
Got it.
well as software implementation, that did cause delays with getting the audit completed. But going forward with FY '24, we are on a good game plan, and I have no worries that we will not be able to make the December 15th deadline.
Yes, sir.
So, Haley, I'm glad to hear that we're on track for appropriate timing this year, because just the way I think about this, and this, I guess this is directed to county staff as well, it's hard. I don't know how we can do a clear budget process with not having a final audit, right? I don't see how that's possible, just from doing simple checks and balances and math. I want to go, here's where I'm going to go backwards a little bit based on what you said something earlier. And I want to understand how this occurs. And I think we may have already answered some of it fragmentally, if that's the right terminology. So going back to the school system, accounting software, and accounting software. It's my understanding when it's one component of the school system budget that what the school system had on books for carry forward money versus what we had on carry forward money, and what the audit showed, it was like 3 variations. How does that happen?
So part of it was related to a transfer between, I believe it was the general fund, correct me if I'm wrong, capital projects funds and the schools. So on your statements, on the government-wide statement, it cannot be shown as a transfer between the county funds and the school funds. So what we had to do is true up through, there is a revenue and expenditure line item of due from the county, or received from the county due to the schools. So we trued it up through there. So on the schools side, they're showing it kind of as a transfer. And for the audit side, we had to show it not as a transfer specifically, but trued it up through the county and school due to, due from line item.
But where is it shown in this document?
So that is going to be, so if you're looking at page 7, so this is gonna be in the county contribution line item, which is towards the bottom of the page. So that'll show on the school side where they received the revenue. As far as the county side where they gave the revenue to the schools, that is gonna be up towards the top of the page under educational expenses. And it looks like the education is about 11,172,000. And the county grants or county contributions is looking to be about 9.9 million is what the schools are showing.
So that $2 million or whatever we're talking, $2+ million is shown in that $11 million figure?
Correct.
I think, and I don't know how we can get past or provide more clarity to this, because we would never be able to know that, right? Just by looking at these numbers.
Correct, yes.
Because if I look at these numbers, it shows me, to me, it seems like the school was looking at a $4.5 million carry forward budget,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
If I was looking at their true up page.
Yes, yes.
So that's a little deceiving from our standpoint. And especially when it comes to budget time, or if we're discussing this with the school system when they come and ask for the carry forward money. So from a staff perspective, I mean, how do we address this on a staff level?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I mentioned to you earlier, I talked to Dr. Wells today and went over all the numbers. We specifically, Ms. McBride provided to me the information that shows that true up and shows kind of how that played forward. We're going to address that by working with the school systems, our staff, county staff, and schools to address making sure that all those numbers are in there early enough where we're giving good information to Brown Edwards, so it's clear and shows that final number.
So,
Correct. Yes.
It's not a fund-based statement.
Yes.
I think that's the difference.
Yes. So I think, yeah, that is the difference between that, the 4 million, the true up that you're seeing. That's on a fund basis level, not the government-wide level that I just pointed out on the first 2 exhibits. So they're not gonna agree. The 4 million true up, that would agree on the fund-wide statements. which are going to be your like exhibits 3 and 5, and I don't remember the schools off the top of my head, but those are the county's general fund-wide statements.
Okay. Some, from a staff and county perspective, going forward, obviously, we know there's no communication between, I don't know what the school system software is, but RDA. We clearly know that there's no communication between the two systems, right? What do we do from a county perspective more frequently? And I'm hoping that's gonna fall into what you were pertaining to a moment ago, as far as regular communication and reconciliation for checks and balances between the two systems. I think what bothers me the most about this is again, we're looking at this 7 months late, really. That's really bothersome after we've approved a budget and hopefully we're in good shape. But I guess that's just a comment that I hopefully going forward, we're gonna correct some of this stuff.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, sir. Board, any further questions?
Can you tell me a little bit more about the line item budgets being exceeded and how that occurred and where the money came from to cover those?
Stacy might can add a little bit to this. We think it may have been our grouping as well. The way we grouped several of these individual accounts could have put it over that budget. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
That's okay.
So I'll own the fact that we changed staff and we were overwhelmed, and I do believe in the transition that a couple of budget entries were not given to the auditors or were missed that should have been done. That's why I said in my response in the audit that we're fully staffed to the best of our ability, and we will be doing full reviews of each fund. We used to not get comments about, we didn't budget in the grant funds and the special revenue funds, but that's a comment now, so we'll make sure that those carrybacks are done before we produce the final trial balance for fiscal year '24. Honestly, the few that are there are ones that I would say I missed giving them is highly likely at this point. It's a long time ago. I can't go back and figure that out at this point. So we are going to fix that going forward and make sure that I know all the entries that are going and that I've reconciled and reviewed every single fund closely. And hopefully now that I have that person on staff, that won't be a problem. But we were without, I was it for 7 months in the middle of '23, so things were not fun. So that's the only thing I can tell you. And I think we're in a good place. Everybody's working towards the '24 ending on time.
So I'm not a finance person, but I play one on TV. So if I'm reading this correctly and hearing you correctly, we'll take Chief Beam's 911 budget, all right? Okay. I'm not even sure it was his back then, but that was overspent, right?
On their side and on our side, it looks different. So that's why I think something was missing and I didn't catch that. There comes a point where I hand over a trial balance and then we have to send all the entries that we're making to them. And we had a lot of transition work going on, and I just think that one got missed. And I have put another process in place to make sure that I know every entry that's going to those auditors to make sure that they're all getting there.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So built off of that statement right there. So if that's the case, we all make mistakes, right? We're all
Right.
human. If that occurs, then Haley, correct me if I'm wrong, should that be Brown Edwards? Where are the checks and balances to where one person calls the other one out to where we get this trued up?
They don't know what we've appropriated and what we haven't. I would say that's not their responsibility, that's on me. It's my responsibility to get all budget entries to them after we've closed the books, as we're making other entries. And we do some transfers to clean stuff up after the fact. We send them to them. Any adjustments that we do, it saves us, Haley, I counted, I think we had 10, counting the fixed asset entries that I still ask them to make because it's cumbersome with the jointly owned assets between us and the schools. So I still let them do it because it's on a spreadsheet. I can't wait to get that module up and running. But we've gone a long ways, and there's only a few entries that they make now. So I try to get all those entries done and send them to them. What I'm saying is we missed some getting emailed because we had people learning.
So on this new software, and I'm gonna keep picking on Chief Beam because he's back there, but will Chief Beam be able to look at his budget real time?
We're working on that. We're trying to get everybody comfortable in our office on how to teach and help with the modules that we have up. And I'm working to build on our end, because we don't have all the modules up. We don't have the treasurer, we don't have the commissioner yet. There are manual entries that have to be made to record the daily activity in the treasurer's office. We're working to get those processes in place, and yes, he should be able to see his budget in real time. At least I can pull it for him right now because we have not rolled out to the departments to have access yet. But that's in the future.
So I'm sorry.
No, go
So
ahead.
looking forward on the fiscal year '24 budget, are you seeing any department budgets being overspent, or, because we're talking about fiscal year '23 right now.
I have not done all my cleanup for '24. We close '24 on the 15th. We kind of stop all the APs and everything, and then I start my review and move this pot to that pot because there's always money in different places. So we do those cleanups probably the 1st of September or the last meeting in September. We'll bring some transfers back to clean that up if we need to. But I believe dispatch is probably over budget, but EMS is not. So I usually try to just shift that money around.
The reason this is just me, is the reason I'm questioning it is because at the end of the year, right? And we get all these supplemental requests in, right? That's kind of like leftover money from all the budgets, right? Well, if it's really not left over, we really don't know how much we've spent. Have we spent too much, or, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
You won't know that until.
I don't want to, it's a philosophical way, and it's a little bit of a trust thing, but I know where the pots are. I just haven't physically moved them yet.
Okay, so, and I hate to do this, but this plays right back into what we just talked about as far as redundancy.
I could use 2 more people.
None of us, all right, I don't want to even talk about that right now. I'm not even entertaining that discussion. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Right.
You just said out of your mouth, you know where the pots are. That's not good, right? That's just not a good way for us to be doing business.
Well, that's part of the process of us actually getting everybody onto the system, and they can see what they
I
have.
think how I interpret that is, where leftover money is with different departments, not that it's hidden away.
I'm not saying, that's not what I
Okay.
was insinuating.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, she's saying that she's the one that knows this stuff, and I'm talking about just a redundancy in information, is what I'm saying.
Well, we're building on those accounting policies, and we should have someone else will, in my office, have that information as we do that.
So
We just don't have that yet.
Okay. So what's the timeline going forward for RDA?
We're anticipating, we're currently trying to get all the processes smoothed out, so we've done our first month. I have, we have a meeting next week to talk about the rest of this part of the RDA, but I would like to see, my wish is to have purchase orders and encumbrance system up and working in the fall, no later than December. We are planning to have their employee portal, hopefully planning to have it deployed by January.
Is this for the employee portals where they can go in and see their accruals and paychecks?
See their
and things like
paycheck
that?
stubs and stuff, yeah.
Okay,
It's not tied to our leave accruals, so it will be, that's in two separate places. But they will be able to see their check stubs, their W-2s. They'll be able to see all of their demographic information, if they need to change their address. All that information will be in that portal, and they can change it on the spot. Those are the two pieces that are on the forefront right now. As soon as we're comfortable, we're going to roll out to our test group, which is the Service Authority, to get them online to do APs and payroll, and then we'll start picking a few departments and rolling out to them a little bit at a time. I can't tell you where that's going to end because it's going to take a while, but that's our plan, is everyone will have access.
Yeah, and Mr. Adams, I would kind of get back on the pots, like where the money is. I think that's part of what RDA is going to help us with, is that, not only department heads like Mr. Beam, but all of us will have quick update access to these,
Yes.
where these funds
I mean,
are.
they will have logins.
Yeah.
and I agree with
Yeah,
that. So I'm gonna flip another question. So I'm gonna go on a limb, I don't know what my fellow board members will think about this, but it seems to me that this is pretty important, right? I know the county's expended quite a bit of money for RDA, right? We've invested a lot in this, time, effort, money, right? And our finances are based now off of RDA. I'm assuming you guys are using a combination of Bright and RDA. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yes, we're ending fiscal year '24 in Bright,
Right?
and we have started fiscal year '25 in RDA.
Okay. So now I'm going to give in a little bit based on your statement a moment ago, Bert, you need 2 more people, kind of. So,
I kinda,
well,
I'm kidding.
so what can we do? Number one, are there any resources through RDA to help us expedite this process?
That's a great question. Jackie and I met with Rainey Grubb just last week to talk about that. Rainey's coming back with a proposal next week, okay, to talk about how we could potentially expedite the process.
So do we know what that looks like, or?
Well, we'll know next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're using the new software now.
Yes, sir, and I'm figuring out the
For this-
processes to
So
keep
moving
everything up to
forward-
date, and
Moving forward, we're using the new software, which is supposed to fix a lot of these issues.
Oh,
yeah, so,
Expediting, we're talking about getting it out to department heads.
well, there's 3 phases, so we've implemented phase 1.
Yeah.
We still have phase 2 and phase 3 to go. So we have to still roll out the
Phase 2 is
treasurer
gonna
and the
take-
commissioner. We're still rolling out. We just rolled out the phase 1 part.
So we're
Part of
not
it.
completely done.
part of it is
Correct.
not complete.
Correct.
So phase 2 is the commissioner, correct? That has a minimum of a 6-month rollout, 6-month completion just of the first part. I know that for a fact. We have to transfer her software to a new software, her assessment software, before we can get onto RDA with her. That's a 6-month process.
So there's probably still some very painful things to.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Mr. Bryant, I would be curious after what was his name?
Rainey Grubb.
Okay.
Mr. Grubb.
Once he comes next week to see, I mean, and I'd like to hear what the options are to see if we have any funds left over in that project that could help us do that.
Okay, I'll give the
Because
board.
in my opinion, the longer we go with segregation in systems, the more opportunity for error.
Sure. I'll give the board an update on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want more from Haley?
Yeah, I have a question.
Ms. Tucker.
And mine comes under miscellaneous.
Okay.
So I was not aware of the fact that if a board member of any of our boards or a commission member that is required to file a personal finance statement at the beginning of the year and doesn't do so, that we're dinged for that on our audit.
Yes.
I didn't know that, so thank you for that. Now that I do know, many of these people are appointees of this board. Board members, I don't know how you all feel, but if they're not doing things in a timely manner, I would like to know about it. Not to be ugly, but if you can't get satisfaction from them, maybe the chair or vice chair should make a phone call.
Well, wait a minute, Kristen, did I turn mine in on time?
Wasn't one of them.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Probably me.
Ms. Tucker, I want to give you one example.
Is it me?
It was not. It was no. No, it was no one up here. But there was a member of another board that filed it, but filed it with the wrong date, just put the wrong year, and that was one of the two. One of them was just the year was wrong, and so it was actually just one that was late.
All right, so having said that, when we advertise for these positions that, for commissions and things, do we make them aware that they'll have to do these reports, that their finances will become public? Because many people aren't aware of that. They want to participate, but when you say, we got to make your finances public, they're like, oh my, So I want to make sure they know up front.
Well, I'll make sure we do that.
Thank you, that was it.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further questions? All right, do we need a motion with this? Mr. Bryant, motion to accept, is there a motion, board?
So moved.
All right, motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh that the board accept the audit for fiscal year '23 as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. I vote aye as well. Any opposed? None, motion passes. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
All right, next item we have is a special presentation from the EDA. Ms. Hanson.
Good afternoon. Last fall, you all at your strategic planning retreat had asked that the EDA give an overview of incentives. And so as we were considering this, we wanted to give you as full a picture as possible. So I reached out to the State Organization for Economic Development, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, VEDP, and we were fortunate they responded with the Director of Incentives for the Commonwealth of Virginia, Aileen Martz, who's come in from Richmond, who's going to give you a top-level view of our incentives. Then I'm going to come up and I'm going to give you the local Amherst County, and then we have a couple of board members from the EDA who are in our incentive committee who will add a few perspectives as well. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Aileen and get her presentation queued up. I think we got to hit escape. There we go. Do you want to use this to roll it? Just advance. I'm going to move this so you can see. And please feel free to ask questions during any of the presentations.
Thank you. So I am Aileen Martz. I'm the Director of Incentive Programs for the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. VEDP is the state's main economic development organization, and we have a variety of teams or divisions within the state agency. What the state agency is promoting with doing is stimulating and supporting the economy through the growth of business. VEDP was created in 1995. We are governed by a 17-member board, and we have approximately 180 staff across our divisions. These divisions include business investment. They work to create lead generation and develop business activities throughout the Commonwealth. We also have an international trade division and support divisions that include economic competitiveness, research, and incentives. So economic development is truly about understanding the influences on economic growth and taking steps to make sure that your economic base is healthy.
Business growth is what adds to the tax base. It generates new revenues through the investment of new capital investment and job creation. And businesses locate and grow in a location based on the needs of that business and when it makes economic sense to companies. There are a lot of components that go into economic development and making decisions for businesses. And so to encompass a robust system in order for businesses to grow, businesses will take into account factors such as where they are located, where their suppliers are, where their customers are, tax climate, workforce and talent, as well as quality of life in the area that they are looking to be in. So over the years, we've seen a number of companies that are either looking to expand or have outgrown where they currently are, or businesses that are looking to locate new facilities. Here, we've shown different factors that have really driven these projects, primarily workforce and the availability of workforce and a skilled workforce has been universally one of the top drivers for businesses and their location decisions. Also key is proximity to their customers, suppliers, real estate options, having a ready, available site or building that can meet the timeline for companies that need to be up and running, as well as the tax climate, infrastructure around transportation, tend to be those primary location factor decisions. What we consider secondary factors, these come into play once the primary factors have been solved for. These include recruitment and training assistance, incentives, the level of community support, and just in general, executives' personal preferences. You'll see those come into play as a secondary factor.
Stop right there.
Yes.
And go back.
Yes.
So I just want to point out, if you look at the primary selection factors of when people are looking at our county or our region, right? Quality, availability, and cost of the workforce, right? Quality of life factors, our schools, the amenities that we provide, right? And our tax and regulatory climate. So when we're investing in our school system and we're investing in our young people and we're investing in our parks and rec facilities and those types of things, those are things that are important to new businesses that may want to locate in our area. Is that what that's saying?
That is a factor of that, yes.
Okay.
If you don't have people who want to live in your community, they're going to have trouble getting the workforce to support their business. So having an inviting community with good schools, good recreation facilities, all help drive.
Good law enforcement, good
Yes.
fire, EMS.
Yes, all help drive having that workforce available for those businesses.
Thank you.
So talk a little bit about why incentives are provided for economic development projects. While location factors drive the business decisions, the incentives really help with the competitive nature of projects, because these projects are not only looking at one locality, often they are looking multiple localities, multiple states, and sometimes even internationally. And the incentives help ensure competitiveness. So one thing to point out, businesses are always looking to minimize the cost and the risk associated with their expansions. And incentives can help kind of alleviate some of those risk factors. Competition is fierce. When a new company is looking to place a facility, it can be multiple locations across the US, internationally. And so we really use incentives to kind of tip the scale for projects when all the other factors are pretty much equal. And so also, incentives also demonstrate that there is a partnership between the business and the government, and really gives the message that the business is valued. So when developing incentives, there's some things that really need to be thought of. The incentives, they need to make economic sense for both the business and the entity that is giving the incentive, whether it's the state or the locality. Incentives generally should be available to both new and existing companies. Your existing companies are really where you're going to see most of your growth. It's much more difficult to recruit a brand-new company to your location rather than helping your existing businesses grow. You want to support the development goals of your locality with whatever incentive programs that you develop and offer. And you want to make sure that you have that partnership between the public and private sector. Ideally, the incentives, if you have them developed, are going to be performance-based, and that in the incentive program, you have some sort of enforcement tied to your incentives. And just this is generally how the Virginia Economic Development and the state thinks about the incentive programs we administer. We have a portfolio of discretionary incentive programs that we administer. So we have strategic sectors or industries that we target that we know are growth areas for the state. So we align our incentives with those target industries. We want to make sure that when we offer an incentive, that it's impactful, that it's meaningful in the decision-making for the project. And we really look to maximize the wealth. So we're looking at revenue generation of the economic development project around its investment and job creation and what the new revenue is that this project will create. Another component is diversifying the job base, because your economy is much more stable if your economic base is broad. And so we also, at times, use our incentive programs to solve for a specific need. If we have a project that has a specific need, there may be unique training needs associated with it. We may offer incentives around those specific training needs. Other incentives may be tied to infrastructure improvements that may be needed for the project. And we really look, when we do an incentive package, we look at all incentives across the state that may be applicable to the project and coordinate that. So we're coordinating our incentive programs that we administer with other state agencies and also with the localities in which the projects would be going. And so our goal is that when we apply incentives to projects, that this is really enhancing the quality of life based on the jobs and the investment being made by the project. So we employ a return on incentive analysis for every project that receives a discretionary incentive. What we do, this analysis captures the job creation, the wages, the capital investment that's being made based on the location in Virginia that is going. And the ROI estimates revenue generation based on the multipliers applied to the industry for that business. So the ROI calculation estimates the revenue, then we apply the incentives to figure out what that incentive value should be for the company. So when we structure the incentives, we are usually looking at the revenue stream that's generated from the ROI, and we base the payment structure for those incentives to make sure that the state revenue stream remains positive. So typically, the incentives are paid on a post-performance basis. And then our incentives also take into account any matching requirements that there may be from a locality. We have certain discretionary programs that require matches from the locality. These matches vary depending on the program. Our most common discretionary program that's used, the Commonwealth's Opportunity Fund, requires a dollar-for-dollar match. In addition, this is our kind of due diligence process timeline. We have a committee. It's called the Project Review and Credit Committee. This is a cross-team group at VDP that reviews every incentive package that we put forward for companies. Prior to meeting, we go through a due diligence process. We ask all companies for their financial information so we can verify and determine what risk may be associated with offering incentives to a company. And so we have a review process for the due diligence there. We do the tax forecast, which is the return on investment analysis, after which we structure the incentives that are being offered to the company. Following up, we do performance agreements or MOUs on all our discretionary programs. And there, we have within the incentives group a team that does compliance after the announcement of the project, and to make sure the companies are performing as promised. On occasion, we may have clawbacks on incentives. Typically, those are older projects. Our discretionary programs used to be paid initially up front. In the past, probably not quite 10 years, the focus of incentive payments has moved away from upfront payments and clawbacks. We try to avoid a clawback situation by paying any incentives post-performance. That really helps not get anybody into a uncomfortable situation or having to ask for money back. And then usually once all the compliance is done, the projects are closed out. And that is all that I have. Are there any questions?
Board, any questions? All right,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, now for our local overview of incentives. As you already probably know, the purpose is to incentivize proposed private economic development projects. They're going to bring new jobs and investment to Amherst County. That was it. Why incentives? All incentives are based on the principle that companies have a choice of where they're going to locate or where they're going to grow. And intense competition follows. We have competition in our backyard, in our own region, we have competition in our own state, and we have competition throughout the United States. So we really have to have an incentive program that's going to at least make us competitive in the projects that we are going after. We especially pursue manufacturing projects, and the reason for that is it has the highest multiplier effect. You heard Aileen mention that. That's basically for every new job in manufacturing, they're almost always higher paying jobs than average. They have a couple spin-off 1 or 2 jobs as that new employee goes out and buys food at Food Lion and gas, gets their hair cut, their teeth cleaned, that type of thing. And incentives can have a big impact on decisions. So to compete, we've got to have that active incentive policy. And one of the things I wanted to mention is sometimes people think, well, these big corporations, you know, they're going to stay here. Why do we need to worry about incentives for them? It is interesting that in a large corporation that has 10 or 12 production plants within their system, they are competitive for the new taxable investment dollars. If they're going to upgrade or expand one of the plants, it's a competition within that corporation to which plant is going to get that additional investment, that additional growth, those additional jobs. So even our local companies here, within their own companies, they sometimes have to be competitive, and incentives come into play there too. And in return, the company makes an investment in a new or expanded operation, and Amherst County gets those tax benefits and the new jobs. So what's our current incentive program. That is, in 2013, you all, the Board of Supervisors, realized we needed to have a program on the books for incentives, and you gave the EDA Board the authority to grant commitments for economic development incentives, and that's in the code. And most incentives are reimbursements of new taxable real estate, machinery and tools, and business personal property taxes. So what businesses qualify? They are for-profit, new or existing businesses that derive more than 50% of their revenues from outside the county. So examples of that is manufacturing. It could be regional distribution or service centers, corporate headquarters, IT, operations, and even hotels. People come from outside the county, they stay at the hotel, spend their money, and then they leave. So a variety of them can qualify, and this actually aligns nicely with the VEDP program as well. So the process, how does it work? A qualifying company, when they are thinking about investing, and for some of these companies, it's almost a year in advance, they have to put in with their corporation or wherever what they think they need to do to grow their line, their manufacturing line, they'll put in a request for dollars to go ahead and expand that facility. They'll come to us first and say, do you have an incentive that we can use as part of the package to push up to the corporate and see if they'll do that expansion at our plant instead of somebody else's plant? So a qualifying company, before they're ready to make that decision, will then apply for a EDA incentive. It'll take it to the EDA board. If the EDA board approves of that incentive, then we will have a performance agreement that is signed by the company, the EDA, and as well as the county. Now, our incentives are basically a tax rebate. They make a new taxable investment, again, real estate, business personal property, machinery and tools. If you're an existing business, you have to show a new taxable investment of $250,000 threshold or more. If you are a new business, that threshold is $500,000. So the rest of this process is no money changes hands until the company pays its taxes and the new investment is verified through the Commissioner of the Revenue. After verification, the EDA will request from you all that the incentive amount that the company paid on their new taxable investment for that year is then reimbursed back to them, and they get a check in the mail on that. Most of our tax incentives are for 5 years. There are other potential incentives that are out there. There can be reimbursement of application, permitting, and inspection fees, reductions in price from market value for sites in the Amalon Commerce Center. That's a great way to try to entice, especially our expanding local businesses. We've got a lot for you. We have a place for you to grow in Amherst County and not lose them to another locality. Or it could be any EDA properties owned, or potentially we would come to you if it was a county-owned property. We can do full or partial reimbursement of landfill tipping fees and water and sewer availability fees, but that would come to you all for a decision on something like that. Now, if we had a large business prospect, that is when we would coordinate with VEDP. Everything's done confidentially. We cannot make let anyone know about it until they actually are ready to make an announcement. But we want to go to VEDP and try to get the best incentive package so that we are competitive to get that project. It does require usually a local match. So, we understand that ahead of time. Those large businesses, they're going to weigh each of these incentive packages. They want to know, who's got the best site for us, who's got the best incentive package. They look at all those different location factors. And it's true even with expansions. It's not just new businesses, it's expanding businesses. So generally, if we were to have a large prospect and we were going to put forward something beyond our normal incentive package, we would invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure is like getting utility lines to that project site. The good news is those stay in the ground and they are a continued asset for Amherst County. If the return on investment was especially high, like we got a really large prospect, a lot of great paying jobs, incredible tax base that would come with it, then we may need to come to you all and say, okay, are you all ready to put in some additional funding for incentives to try to make this a winning project for us? Now, we've got two of our board members here. Chad Eby with Hermle North America is going to come up, and he's going to give you his perspective on incentives.
All right, thanks, Victoria. Chad Eby, run Hermle since 2010. I've also been on the EDA board for a long time. And, there's some things that have come up for me personally, also with the EDA board that I thought might be helpful for this meeting. The first thing I would say is that we really can't take our especially our existing businesses for granted. Just because they're here, just because they love this place, doesn't mean that they're here forever. And I can say that because over the time that I have been at Hermle, we have been recruited many times to move. Typically, it's states south of us trying to take us away. But it's a common practice, and the way it works, every time it's the same thing. They call up and they say, hey, I'm so-and-so from somewhere, and this is what I've got to offer you. Would you come down here and consider moving to wherever we are? So, the incentives that we offer our companies here can play a part in keeping these businesses here and keeping them away from other hungrier areas. So the second thing I would like to say is that we, at Hermle, the owner of our company in Germany, was an owner of another company in Germany that decided they were going to open a subsidiary in the United States. And I think this was before I came on the EDA board, but I was active along with Victoria trying to recruit that business to come to Amherst. And initially they would be in our building and they would share some space with us and then eventually build on the 18 acres that we own across the street. And I thought that our package was great. I was going to help them out. We had some incentives. But at the end of the day, they decided to go to Charleston simply because whatever South Carolina was offering them was better. So I would say if we didn't have incentives, or a reason for them to even come, I don't even think they would have talked to us, even though there was an ownership connection. It wasn't like this was a blind recruiting effort that we were making. Victoria hit on something too about when companies that have multiple locations, they just happen to have one in Amherst, and how there's a capital amount that company is going to spend, and I can tell you we don't always win those. There are examples of times where we've worked with companies, thought that they were going to invest in Amherst County since I've been on this board, and they've decided to invest that money elsewhere. So we do need to have those incentives in place to at least have a chance. And the last thing I would like to say is that Hermle has received some incentives under the program that Victoria laid out. Obviously, I wasn't able to vote on that stuff myself, but it did have an impact on our willingness to invest that money here. We have plants in Germany, but the money got invested here to some extent because there was some incentives on the table from Amherst County. Any questions?
Appreciate your commitment to the board, Chad.
All right, thank you.
All right, now we have Paul Kilgore, also on the Incentive Committee on the EDA Board, business owner and realtor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. A little while ago, Mr. Adams brought up that Amherst County, the foundation of Amherst County is agriculture, and that's correct. And years ago, a big part of that was tobacco. And I've sold a lot of farms in Amherst County, and there's old tobacco barns about everywhere you go. But I don't know if there's anybody in this room that remembers tobacco being grown in Amherst County. Certainly, it hadn't been actively grown for 30, 40 years. So when the tobacco settlement with the tobacco companies and the state came down, a line had to be drawn somewhere of where they were going to incentivize these localities who were losing these tobacco jobs to, have some economic development there. Well, our ancestors quit growing tobacco too soon because that line was drawn, it was drawn right up to Amherst County practically. So we have adjoining counties that we're competing with for business to locate here that have the advantage of these tobacco funds. And I can tell you, I was mayor of the town of Amherst for 4 years, and I was on the town council for 4 years prior to that. We directly lost businesses coming to this community because of the tobacco settlement and where they could get this money in adjoining counties, basically fish out the same pool for employees, be in Central Virginia for whatever reason that they were thinking about locating here, and we lost them because we couldn't compete with the counties that had the tobacco money. So what these incentives that we're talking about here today, what they're in place for really is to level the playing field a little bit with these other counties, localities that are close by that can incentivize business to either grow there or locate there. So that's what we're doing with this incentive money. It's worked out well so far. We hope to, you're basically giving back money that you would have never got in the first place for a couple of years in effort to retain them or to get them to come here for the next 20 or 30 years. So, the way it's set up, you don't give out the money until, they pay their money. They have the machinery or whatever in place. So, I think it's a great program. That's all I got, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Always
Board
feel free, if you have a question, to reach out.
Will do. I'll just say, I think it's crucial that we incentivize companies, whether new or existing. I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I think it's crucial that we maintain a strategy to that, to bring in the right companies here. So I appreciate everything y'all are doing. Thank you.
Welcome.
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I remember way back when, the infamous penny, where the Board of Supervisors put in the penny. And that penny has reaped such rewards. I want to follow up on what Mr. Martin said about what you all are doing allows us to make the other stuff work. We need to get the good schools. We need to have good public safety. We need the infrastructure. We need the parks. We need our farmland. That's part of the beauty of our county. So thank you, board, and thank the resources you brought with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
The airport director, he had to jump flight to Washington at 6 this evening, so he had to leave.
Okay.
And I've got a flight myself in about an hour, so I've got to leave as well.
Okay.
So if you want us to present next time to you, Chris, you to ask for it, just let us know and we'll be happy to come again.
We'll have Mr. Bryant reach out to you.
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next item we have is new business, Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Ayers.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. Good to see each of you all here this afternoon. And did you all have a copy of the TASER proposal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What this is, Board, is in taking over the administration again, there's several things that we've been working on, trying to figure finance resources and whatever to upgrade and replace and do what we need to do without going to the backs of the taxpayers. And I've always strived to do that through highway safety funds or whatever we can attach to as far as alternative funding than coming before you all as a board here today. I think some of the senior members here know that it was very seldom that I stood before you all to ask for anything, additional financing for equipment for the men and women that go do the job that they do every day. But I came to find that the tasers, which is a less lethal piece of equipment that they wear on their duty belt each and every day, had not been replaced and has not been replaced since the first ones were purchased back prior to my retirement. These items have a 5 to 6 year life on them, so obviously they've been outdated for some time. We've been very blessed. I consider myself blessed to have filled a lot of the vacancies that we've had. So some of the men and women don't even have tasers that are out working today, and I think it's imperative that they have this piece of equipment. It's saved lives, thousands of lives, since tasers have been implemented, both for the officers and also for our citizens. If there's someone under attack and an officer arrives, that's a less lethal tool that they have to deploy to get the situation under control. I'm a firm believer in tasers. These items are quite expensive, as you all will see. There's 63 units that would need to be purchased. This is at a cost of $365,034.60. There is a contract that here before you that I need to sign, but I absolutely would not sign it until I came before you all and explained how we plan to pay for this. And this is, we plan to pay for it at a sum of $73,006.92 a year through highway safety funds for the next 5 years. Again, trying to stay off the backs of the taxpayers to do this, but I feel it's essential that we upgrade these tasers and get them in the field as soon as we can. And I'm just requesting permission from you all as a board for me to sign this so that we can get these tasers ordered. Does anyone have any questions?
I do have a question. Sheriff, I was flabbergasted at the age of this equipment that your officers have with them. Is there a chance that they would have tried to deploy it and it wouldn't work, or what would have happened? They've gotten a warning that it was not going to work?
Well, there's several of them that we've had to send back to have repaired, and obviously this model is no longer being manufactured, and a lot of the parts are obsolete. They're not available, so some of these units have not been able to be repaired. They test them as required and try to keep the ones that we have as serviceable as they can to utilize. It's as any piece of equipment, Ms. Tucker, that it's subject to failure at any time, and we just hope and pray when it's called on to do what it's supposed to do that it does it. The new systems are much more user-friendly. They're actually, and we're getting the training option that is less costly to the county, that gives them the training module where they can actually train in-house, and we're not having to deploy those projectiles are quite expensive. So the new ones are, they have multiple abilities to fire, where the older ones are just one time. But yes, ma'am, that is a potential that they could not operate when called upon because of their age.
That's just not acceptable. So I'm with you.
Understand.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I asked you about this, but this includes basically a maintenance program that goes along with the
That's
tasers,
correct. Maintenance program, training, and this did include the cost of the training module where we can do in-house training with as new staff may come on, or we're required to do mandatory in-service training on these all along, and we will be able to do this in-house, much more cost-effective.
We may be able to save you some money too, because I think Mr. Pugh volunteered to come up to be a testee, rather.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Can I shoot it?
No, thank you.
But
Yeah.
they are a great less lethal weapon. And there have been quite a few situations that we've had to deploy them that could have been much worse situations.
Mr. Chairman, if nobody has any other questions, I'm sorry, Mr. Martin.
So, Sheriff, no doubt you need them, not question, we're gonna get them for you. My question is, you referenced highway safety funds. Are you using that interchangeably with the fine revenue?
That's all the same thing, Mr. Martin.
Okay,
Highway
so-
safety fund revenue
Okay.
is the revenues from the highway safety program, yes, sir.
So, what this is proposing is to take $73,000 whatever dollars a year out of that money and pay for these tasers.
Yes, sir.
So, if we agree to do that, which is fine, then we need to make sure we keep track of that, right? And if everybody stops speeding, and you don't write any more tickets, which isn't gonna happen, we as a board are gonna have to be committed to pay for these things.
That's correct.
So, and I'm fine with all of that, but just clarifying that we're tying up these funds for, because how much fine revenue money do we get?
We have $224,000 right now,
Okay,
and that does not include the 20% for Parks and Recreation.
and about how much annually does that?
It's changed. The numbers have increased.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Mr. Martin, I can tell you that Ms. Mays ran some numbers for her based on just the last 6 months is what the guys and gals have created or revenues that have been brought in. And there's about $128,000 a year that it comes out of that funds to pay for the two officers that work highway safety full-time. So that's $128,000 that comes out of that fund. You're looking at this cost of $73,000 a year for the next 5 years to come out. And based on the average numbers that she ran, then we should, it's kind of low right now as far as, but it's about $88,000 the way she computes it that we would have left over in the 12-month period.
Is that less the 20% for Parks and Rec, or does that include the 20%?
That would be her numbers she computed based on the 80% that comes back to the sheriff's office.
End of the day, what I'm getting at is, at least in the past, I believe this money was used for other things, for equipment for the sheriff's department. I'm at least committed to make sure you have the equipment you need, whether it comes from this fund or not. But we kind of need to know that come budget time next year, right?
I understand,
So if you
Mr.
see some
Martin.
big needs next fiscal year, let's not just have to count on this fine revenue money. Let us know what the needs are, so we can.
Exactly. And, I discussed this the other day with some folks regarding in-car cameras. We're at a point right now as to whether we're going to keep them or let them go. There are about 8 units right now that need to be replaced. None of this stuff has been replaced in the last 8 years, none of it. And you're looking at 8 units at $13,783 apiece. So, it continues as we're trying to pull things together, and I'm doing my best. Cars that had been set down and were not planning on being reused again, we've taken them out and had to spend quite enough bit of money on it to get them in service again. We have utilized everything that we have, and I'm doing everything I can to keep them coming before you all to ask me anything. So that's always been my practice and will continue to be, but there may be the time that I need to do that because, decisions of whether we keep these cameras or let them go, it's a big decision. I've got a gentleman up there now. It's costing $5,000 a month just to archive the data that's coming out of these cameras. And the reason being, it's never had any type of program where it's deleted the video and data that could be deleted. It's continually been built up for the last 6, 7, 8 years and never been deleted. And it's costing, at a minimum right now, $5,000. Well, when you've got a significant increase of manpower on the road and many more traffic stops, these cameras are utilized quite a bit. So the download is increasing, and we can't sustain that on a yearly basis if we can't generate something to get this data out of the system.
I have a question. We just received the audit, Stacy, under fine and forfeitures. That's the money that's received through the sheriff's office. Would that be a correct statement? Or would that be fines and forfeitures? Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I need to look.
Oh, it's on page 137. It gives you a list from 2014 to 2023 of the amount of fine and forfeitures that come into the county. And if you look back over time, you can get a gauge on how much was coming in. There was a dramatic drop-off the last several years.
Yes, sir.
So, but there was upwards of, if this is correct, $500,000 plus per year coming into the county.
A large increase in the amount on a monthly basis, so I'm confident he has funding coming in for this.
Yeah. But Mr. Martin's right. Yeah, we definitely need to support the sheriff's officers, the sheriff's deputies.
Gentlemen, and ladies, I'll do my best to.
Well, I don't, this is how I feel. I feel like you're sitting over there and you're trying to make things work because you don't want to come here, and I appreciate that. But if you have to come here you have to come here, because I can't speak for the entire board, but I think I do. We're committed to our law enforcement.
You absolutely have been, yes, sir.
To our EMS and
I
fire.
have no qualms with the support that I have always received from this board, and public safety arena as a whole, fire rescue and law enforcement. And I understand that, Mr. Martin, but I'm still trying to work through and see if I can find alternative funding. I've been in touch with the Director of Public Safety for the Commonwealth and seeing if there is any alternative funding to help with some of this equipment versus coming here.
Take what you do.
Sheriff, did I understand you to say that you might be considering not putting body cams and cameras back into the vehicles?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. You know, the cost is quite substantial. There's about 8 units right now that are antiquated, and, you know, so you can't have some in some cars, Ms. Tucker, and then some not in cars. You know, uniformity is just like weaponry. There's some weapons right now that are substandard that one officer may have, and then the other officer may have a total different weapon system in the car. Well, if you get in a situation where you're having a shootout and this officer has to go to this officer's car to grab another weapon and get whatever, you don't need to have something that's totally different. Every piece of equipment should be uniform so that man or woman, if they're in a crisis and they need to grab another officer's weapon or piece of equipment, whatever it is, everything's uniform. They know the nomenclature of it. They know how to handle it. They know how to use it. And that's the way it needs to be set up. And we're doing the best we can. But that is correct. These cameras, some of them are functioning, some of them are not functioning. So you have to make a call. What are we going to do?
I'm just going to follow up on what Mr. Martin said. For the safety of our officers and everything else, if we can find a way to keep cameras in these cars, all of them, to your point, I think that'd be the way to go. But you're the sheriff and I'm not, and that's your area of expertise.
So let me do some more seeking to see if we can find alternative funding versus coming before you all. Any other questions, board?
Board, any other questions, comments?
I'll make a comment after, but I want to go ahead and take care of the taser
Okay.
issue first. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve or to allow the sheriff to go ahead and sign off on this rent-to-purchase program for these tasers.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Adams. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Any opposed? None? Congratulations.
Thank you,
sir.
board.
Sign
Thank
off.
you for
Chairman, the
what,
only thing I'd like to follow up was because I was going to bring this up, not to put the sheriff on the spot, but he and I had this discussion the other day. And obviously, I think my words were to him were, I'm not trying to tell you how to run the sheriff's office by any means, because that's not my forte. But I do know from being in the public safety arena for many, many years, the importance of the body cams, especially this day and time. Not only to protect our officers, which is paramount, but also it protects our county. I would ask that, and the sheriff said he's going to do so, I would ask for him to work with Mr. Bryant and potentially present something to us by the next board meeting to see what we can potentially do to assist with this going forward. Does that need to be in a motion? Okay.
Just
that'd
needs
be no
direction.
problem, Mr. Adams. I will work with Mr. Bryant and let him know what our findings are in the next month.
I was going to say, you think you can do it before the August 20th, or do you want to hold off till the first
I'd
of
rather have the
September?
first meeting of September, yes, sir. Give me a month to see what I can do.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Next item we have is the ARPA subrecipient agreement. Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Board, for considering this agreement here. Basically, what this agreement is to do is to memorialize what's always happened, where the county had received ARPA funds from the federal government and have until the end of December 24 to commit those funds. And under Resolution 2022-002-R, you awarded these funds to the authority. And this agreement just memorializes that so that when the federal auditors come in, everyone is protected and the funds don't have to go back to the federal government. I went to the Water and Wastewater Authorities Association and asked them for models of this type of an agreement and received 14 or so. I received a bunch of them, anywhere from 4 pages to the Northern Virginia, 70-some pages, and took the best things I could find out of each of these agreements and came up with what you have before you. Now, the board, I will mention, the Board of Directors for the authority did approve that in their earlier meeting, this agreement. Any questions?
Board, any questions? No? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, I'll make the motion that the board authorize the county administrator to execute this agreement between the county and the service authority. Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Any opposed? None. Passes. Next item we have is the appropriation for additional compensation board for fiscal year '25. Ms. McBride, is that you?
Alrighty. So every year, we estimate the comp board revenue early on. And we don't get the final numbers until late after our process, once the comp board has actually established these budgets for the constitutional officers. Normally, it's not a lot of money. It's usually maybe 10,000 here or 5,000 there, and I don't really come back and ask to do an appropriation. But we've come across some issues, and I'd like to propose the use of the $209,000 that is available right now. That $209,000 covers a new position for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office that was granted by the comp board this year, and the 3% COLA that they're willing to pay for, which we have already budgeted for and been paying. So let me explain how VRS is affecting us on our staffing. Currently, VRS is set up and we have 3 plans. We have Plan 1, we have Plan 2, and we have hybrid. Plan 1 and Plan 2 employees do not have short-term disability that is provided by the county. However, our hybrid employees do have short-term disability provided by the county. So when a person goes out on short-term disability, we must continue to pay them out of our funds 60% of their salary for the short-term disability piece. If they have leave, we're going to pay them their full salary until they run out of leave. This is up to 6 months. What we're finding is we now have essential personnel that are out of commission and need to backfill that position either temporarily or permanently, depending on the timing. So the idea would be to take, this is recurring money. It will be there unless for some reason the comp board decides to chop away positions, but in my experience, I've never seen them do that. Take this recurring money, because it will be there in the future, put the $70,000 into the Commonwealth Attorney's budget as needed, put $75,000 into a pool that can be used to pay that short-term disability, especially if we need to backfill the position, or let's say the person is truly out for 6 months. FMLA runs out at 12 weeks, so we could fill that position permanently, but we can't, in our current budget, we don't budget to pay 2 people for the same position, and that's what we would be doing. So I would suggest to put $75,000 of that into a bucket pool that Linda or Ms. Felix could asked to draw from as we need it. We currently have two situations like this right now. Not filling a position, still paying short-term disability, don't have an employee, don't have the employee here to do what needs to be done. And then the remainder of it, we would put into the savings account line, or the unobligated general fund line that I had set up for any extra funds. I know that is crazy and convoluted, and that's the way the comp board works. So,
I'm so confused.
huh?
I'm
May
quite,
I jump in?
Sure, how so?
So we got extra funds from the comp board, okay? With those extra funds, we've already paid the 3% COLAs, so we have extra funds to deal with. We're asking permission to do it three different ways to divide this money. One of them is required with the Commonwealth's attorney. They have a new position that we're required to pay with these funds. We have an issue that we're dealing with in this request, and that is we have two positions that are hurting, we have two people that are on short-term disability, okay?
is this in the same department? Is
Two
this-
different departments,
So we're outside of the Commonwealth attorneys, we're going
Correct,
somewhere else.
correct,
Okay,
we're going
okay,
somewhere else.
Okay.
So this is reoccurring funds, this is not one-time funds.
Okay.
We're bringing a creative solution to you on how we can deal with the problem that we have that could help us now and could help us in the future. So we could use these funds for the short-term disability pool, to use this to help backfill these two different departments that are struggling with this short-term disability, okay? And then the rest of these funds would just go back into the general fund. So we're replenishing the general fund. And my computer died, sorry, I think it
So
was
it covers-
$65,000.
Yeah, it's 65.
So we're putting money back in the general fund. We're fortunate that we have this money. We were fortunate that we got this additional money. And so we're asking to divide it three different ways. One, put more money back in the general fund. Two, use this money for the required Commonwealth's attorney's position. Three, use it for this issue we have where we have people out on short-term disability, and this would help us temporarily staff and help those departments as they're struggling.
Right, most of this I understand because it was unexpected. Going back to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, we already approved that? I thought the funds were there way back when?
No, this
Weren't
is,
there? We
this
gave
is
an
an
extra
additional
but no money?
position that was given to him by the comp board. And yes, it's kind of confusing, but he didn't have the money yet. So this is the money that goes for that position.
Is the position required?
Comp board gave it to him, yes, it's required.
Okay, I'm gonna tag on to Ms. Tucker's comments. And I think somebody said the comp board crap is very confusing.
It
And
is.
convoluted.
And they won't let me in, so I have
bunch of
no
other
idea.
descriptives. All right, first question is the 209,000, is that carry forward money that was leftover funds from FY '24?
No, this is recurring money.
It's new money from the comp board,
So
recurring.
recurring, so 209,000 extra we'll see every year? Or is that number gonna change?
It changes every year, but what I'm saying is they have a set budget this year. And I started with budget A that had X amount in it. Budget B, which was the final budget, had $209,000 more in it. Next year, they won't cut that. They may increase it a little bit, but they don't normally take positions away.
All right, so that was gonna be my next question. Because I thought whether it was a comp board funded position, or if we have to match it, or if we fully fund it, that office has to come before the board and ask for approval for that position. Am I incorrect in that thought process?
That's what I thought.
He got permission for the position.
From
And-
where?
I thought he did. I have to go back. Let me check on that for you.
Yeah, I don't remember us discussing that in the budget process.
We did not, and I was.
It wasn't known in the budget process, and it wasn't put before you in the budget process, because it's all comp board funded money. We're not matching anything on that.
And I understand that. I
Yeah.
get that.
I think that's why I don't, but I will check with him, but do you remember that? I know
I didn't get a straight answer to my question. My question was,
What do
Is
you-
that a
One more
required
question.
position? Your answer was, we got the funding for it. That's not the answer. Do we have to have that position?
Well,
I'm going to stop. I was under the impression, I was
we
told.
wouldn't get that money if he doesn't have
I
the
was
position.
told that we were, but I would like to, if you're not confident, I would like to table this and double check
Yeah,
it.
let me double check it.
I agree with that
Okay.
sentiment.
Okay.
Because, couple things. One, I don't remember, I'm getting old, but I'm not sure I remember it being in the budget, okay?
It was not in the budget.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Two, the way I recall a lot of this comp funding working is, let's take the sheriff's office. They've got X amount of
Right.
positions that are funded, and then some of them aren't, you know, but we gave everybody a 3% raise, okay? You know, I want to make sure that whatever we put in excess from the general fund into making those comp board employees get the same raise as everybody else, that we could use that money to put back in the general fund to pay ourselves back, right? Because guess what? Next year, we're definitely not going to take money away from our employees, all right? So I'd like to look at it from that standpoint. You know, how much general fund money went into funding these comp board employees? Is this position required? So on and so forth. All right. I would.
Let us check into that. Those are great questions, and I was under the impression it was required, but I would like first time to check into that.
All right.
So the big, we're still in a little bind then, as far as we're currently in the position of having leanly staffed departments that need to have some funding.
I'd like to come back at the August 20th meeting with that. I don't want to
Okay.
tackle that right now until we have a full picture.
Okay.
Got everything you need?
Yes.
Board, any further comments for Mr. Brown or Ms. McBride?
No.
All right. We'll table that.
Can I just reiterate one thing, though?
Yes, ma'am.
That $70,000, if you don't approve approve his position, I just want to give you that heads up, if it's not required, that goes away. It won't be $209,000. Okay? It will be less.
Was there a deadline on that before August 20th, if we put it on the August 20th meeting?
I'm gonna look, he may have already accepted it, so I don't know. I've got to look at I'm gonna go look at the budget that we did, because I have this feeling it was already added in, but I just don't know right here. I need to go there.
Okay, we'll check into that.
Yeah, and just one other note, and this doesn't fall on you, Ms. McBride, but I think with any department, it's just not just the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, but before they accept funds for a position, that in some way, shape, or form could still fall as far as a financial obligation on this board, I think they need to come before this board of supervisors.
We will check that.
I think that's exactly.
And no disrespect, and it may be a constitutional officer, but
Yeah.
at some point in time, when we do the budget process, it could be potentially impactful to this board or to this county. So,
Let me see if we added that in, and then I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
thank you, ma'am.
Next item we have is the Lynchburg Regional Airport Authority Board report. We're not going to be having that. They had to step out, so we'll table that for another time. Moving on, County Administrator's report.
Well, I have the project status report on your packet. Are there any questions about that report?
Board, any questions?
No.
All right, here none. Moving on, County Attorney's report, Mr. Popovich.
I don't have anything at this time.
Thank you, Greg. I mean, no.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have to leave. I've got to pick my wife from the airport. She arrives in a little bit, so I'm
Thank
going
you.
to have to cut out of the meeting. I apologize to the Parks and Recreation Department. If you would like to, you can give me your presentation at another time. All right, thank you.
All right, next item we have is the committee report. Mr. Martin, anything you want to introduce here? You want me to turn it over to Mr. Nixon? Let him have at it.
You know, I report out just about monthly on the Parks and Rec Board. They work very hard, and Ms. Cunningham is our chair this year. I appreciate the work that she does and all the board members, so I'm looking forward to hearing the presentation.
All right, sounds good. Mr. Nixon, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm actually just here to pass out the report. I'm going to turn it over to our chair, Bailey. Come on up.
Salutations, Board and Chairman. The Amherst County Recreation, Tourism, and Cultural Development Department's goal is to offer the citizens of Amherst County, from small children to senior adults, an array of services, classes, programs, and special events. The department encourages citizens to stay involved and active in their community in a wide variety of ways. Some of the ways they are involved are sports and athletics, senior adults, classes, outdoor programs, special events, trips, location rentals, theme park ticket sales, night fishing permits. Total program participants, 12,647. Total revenue, 91,492. Parks. Seminole Park, the Recreation Department applied for and received a Land, Water, and Conservation Fund matching grant in the amount of $165,375 to the Department of Conservation and Recreation for the construction of Seminole Park. The dog park, playground, water fountain, and pavilions have been constructed. The park signs have been installed, and the trees and bushes have been planted. The ADA sidewalk, walking trail, and final landscaping still needs to be finished before the park can be open. The department hopes to have the ribbon cutting sometime in August or September. Mill Creek Lake Park. County staff has installed a maintenance shed on site which will house a newly acquired Kubota ATV and supplies for our park attendants. This will allow them more visibility and an easier means to pick up trash and to complete the other duties in the park. A phone line has been installed to the shed, and this will provide better contact for emergency services. County staff is currently working to get electricity to the shed as well. Coolwell Park. The park maintenance access road has been paved to allow for more parking and easier access for participants to events and programs. A solid walk was added from the parking lot down to the soccer fields. The department has received a lot of positive feedback on these additions to the park. The county applied for and received an ARP grant for $5,500 to construct a bocce ball court in the park, and plan is to have it bid out and constructed this fall. Monroe Ball Field. A new backstop was installed, providing a much better experience for the teams using this field. County and department staff have worked using the department's new infield grading machine to bring the Monroe, Coolwell Park, and Amherst Dixie softball and Monellison Middle School infields into better playing shape. We hope to have all these fields in great playing shape over the next year. Tourism. The department continues to work with the Chamber of Commerce to promote the county and its businesses, special events, and wonderful natural amenities. The Visitor Center had 1,076 visitors. Staff received approval for Visitor Center signs to be placed on the existing signs at the intersection of 29 Business and Route 60. These signs are supposed to be in place by December 2024. A $30,000 VTC marketing grant was acquired this past year, which provided a 15 and 30-second promotional advertisement for TV and social media. The TV ad was shown in Charlottesville, Farmville, Roanoke, and Danville viewing areas. It had 110,947 impressions and had 441 hours of views. The video ad was placed on Facebook and Instagram and had 714,854 total views, and the link was clicked on 11,962 times. An image ad received 114,250 total views, and the link was clicked on 3,941 times. The grant also provided funds to upgrade the tourism Visit AmherstCounty.org website, and it had 24,445 visitors in fiscal year 22 and 23, and 53,799 visitors in fiscal year 23-24, showing a substantial increase in visitors to the county tourism website of 29,354. Future plans. The department is currently working with Hill Studios to do a 5 to 10 year parks and recreation master plan. The future of the Amherst County Recreation, Tourism, and Cultural Development Department is looking brighter, and through this master plan, the hope is to create and provide quality programs, activities, and parks for years to come. That's the end.
All right, thank you.
That's a lot of work.
It is.
Thank you. Questions?
No, I just want to say Seminole Park, it's looking really good, so looking forward to that. One question I did have, what is the latest with Mill Creek? Any updates there?
Yes, sir. DEQ went back out and tested on July the 31st. We're waiting on the second round of test results. You do recall the first round, it was clear that there was a significant amount of algae in the lake, which justified our closure of that lake. So again, we're waiting on the results. As soon as I get them, I'll share them with you.
All right, thank you.
We actually put some more of the VDH signs out this week. Some of them gotten blown off from the storms and that type of thing. So I think some people have been swimming and, at their own risk, but, so. Any other questions?
Board, any other
I
questions?
guess we can anticipate probably with what we've had in rainfall, especially what we're looking forward to at the end of the week, that we probably should see some considerable positive changes up there.
If you go look, you can see it now. I mean,
Really?
there's less algae.
already.
Good deal.
Yeah, you can
Good
see
deal.
less algae.
That's
so,
great.
Yeah.
Any other comments for?
No, the only other comment, I just happened to be, Mr. Beam and I had a meeting in at the Parks and Rec building one night last week. I can't remember, kind of a blur. But it's the ball field really looked nice down at Monroe, and it was refreshing to see the kids out there playing some baseball and stuff like that. So I love seeing stuff like that. And I know which falls into Parks and Recreation. I know this board, made the vote at the last meeting to support the World Series teams. And I don't know if you guys kept up with them on Facebook. I tried to do as much of that as I could, and a lot of them did really well. So that's exciting as how they represented Amherst County. So, but we appreciate everything you're doing.
Well, I want to thank you guys for the support you've given us, because the backstop, I don't know if you saw what was there before, basically chicken wire. And we've had so many requests to use that little Monroe field that I felt like we needed to upgrade it.
Yeah.
And the infield machine has helped us to really make the field look a lot nicer. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item we have citizen comment. We'll reopen floor now to any citizens want to speak. Come on up, Mr. Bryant. Just state your name and district, please.
Sam Bryant, District 1, Tom Martin. I think you guys know I'll push it to be here. I'd ask that you, and I know you can't do it all, but how can we get more people from our community to be in these meetings where you're making important decisions? It's concerning that there's not more people in Amherst County that want to be involved in the county business and hear and know what's going on. As far as the budget goes, I've had a chance to review it. I am concerned that we had a department, it doesn't matter which department, with all due respect, that overspent their allocated budget. I hope that the tools that we've put in place will help them with that, because that's tough as a leader. And as the former Director of Public Safety, I feel for Mr. Beam on that. And I hope that other departments can help out with transparency on that. Thank you for the board members that really dig into the budget and ask the tough questions of our audit. That's great. Mr. Martin and Mr. Adams. And I really like Mr. Pugh being the budget hawk, and I didn't get to say that to him tonight, and he's really good at it. So I hope he'll continue to do that. The only other thing I'd say in coming to this meeting is the tools that the sheriff asked you for are invaluable. I think you all know that, and you supported that, especially the cameras. If he unfortunately has to do away with the cameras, I do remember, and have a pretty good memory, that there was a position that came with those cameras to review all that footage. So I'm sure you're on that. But thank you. And the only other comment I said, that I wanted to share with you is, as the former public safety director, the most rapidly growing sector or corridor of our county during my tenure was the 130 corridor. And there was no Mr. Sam Patel in place. And that is why we spent time and money working on Station 3 in case it was ever needed. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to address the board at this time? All right, seeing none. Move on to matters from members of the board. Mr. Adams.
The only thing that I will bring up is, I think everybody is following the track of Hurricane or Tropical Storm Debbie now. And I know Mr. Beam has got a VDM, correct? Phone call at 6 o'clock.
Yes, sir. We've got one with local elected officials. Hopefully, Mr. Bryant got that this afternoon as well at 6 o'clock.
So from what I understand right now, it's looking like we're somewhere in the 4 to 7 inch of rainfall range. So for any of our citizens watching on Facebook or whatever, I just ask everybody to stay vigilant, stay safe, and don't take any unnecessary risks. And I'm sure Mr. Bean will do a good job updating everyone as the week progresses.
That the governor actually added a declaration of emergency while we were in this meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Martin?
Yeah, a couple of things. Mr. Bryant, I brought this up at the last meeting, I believe, about the truck stop and its lack of compliance on 29.
Yes, sir.
And also the selling of motor vehicles on that site. Did you have a chance to look into that?
Staff looked into that. That site is out of compliance. And so if you would like for us to bring that back to you, we could go back through that. We've been through that process once. We granted him some grace. He had made progress before. It remains not in full compliance.
So what are our options? One, to revoke it, or two, to take him to court?
Correct. Yes, sir. Those are both options.
Okay. And which would you recommend?
I would recommend going back through the revocation process. So we would act like it's a public hearing process. We notify adjoining property owners. We would go through the planning commission process first, where they would review it and make a recommendation to you, and then it would come to you. So that process takes 2.5 to 3 months.
Because what I remember is we had it on the agenda to revoke it. He was making some improvements. We actually gave him a little bit more time on the landscaping.
Correct.
And he stopped again.
That's correct.
So what do you need from us? Do you need a motion?
A motion would be great. If you give us a motion, that would give us directive, and we could start that process.
I would make a motion that we start proceedings to revoke the special use permit for the trucking business on 29 South. Fill in the appropriate name.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Any opposed? None. Motion passes.
Yes, sir.
Anything else, Mr. Martin?
Was, but I can't remember, so.
Fair enough. Ms. Tucker?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything for tonight either. Next item we have is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Talking about pennies, talking about